Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host here at Crimes Untold, and today we're kicking off Valentine's Crimes with case number 1. So this will last from the 1st to the 14th. I will also have my true crime recap that will go up every week along with these. So the first one we're going to discuss is the murder of Bun Chee NyHuis. So this is having been completely known in the area that the NyHuis couple, like, everybody knew they were having issues. But the issues they were having didn't make anyone assume that they would escalate the way that they did, unfortunately. So Bunchie would be murdered by her husband, but what exactly happened wouldn't be discussed for a few years post her potential killing. So Bunchie is thought to have been murdered in late 1983 by her husband Richard. It is thought that the couple got into a fight in regards to money and that Richard wanted to move into a bigger home, but Bunchie voiced the reasoning stating that they didn't have money for this bigger home and they couldn't carry the load of a bigger home. Richard, when he was questioned post finding the remains of his wife, it is said that he spoke about what happened that day. Apparently she came at him and she had her hands raised with a fit of rage and that she bit him. His only response was pushing her away and that she fell on a rock. So this rock, he said, penetrated her brain or penetrated her head. Even with this, she was still alive and that he felt that he needed to suffocate her to put her out of her misery. So the day of this would be determined to be December 3rd of 1983. But forensics showed something completely different. It was ruled that Richard had either used a claw or a tack hammer and hit her on or about the head while he suffocated her by covering her mouth and her nose until she died from the hammer blows to her head. I believe he also covered her mouth to silence her so nobody could hear her. He then would cover her head with a plastic bag and would hold her remains in a chest freezer. And this was in the basement of their home that they lived in. He would keep her in there until the ground outside would thaw so he could bury her. So this plastic bag in particular that he had on her head was a service merchandise bag, and service merchandise used to be a store chain that was out in this time that everybody would frequent. That's why the bag is there. So her body would then be brought to a ranch in Farmington, Missouri, in which he worked as a scoutmaster, and he then buried her in a 2-foot grave. To make sure that decomposition would happen, he would pour lime on the remains. Lime breaks down the body faster than it would naturally. So this ranch was the S-Bar-F Boy Scout Ranch, and he had hoped that her remains would decompose to the point of being non-existent, but that was anything but. So in November of 1987, Ramo Pitkanen was looking amongst the land and thought he saw a turtle shell. But when he looked closer, he discovered a skull. He would return to Finland because of how terrified he was. So he was originally from Finland, just to preface this, and he was out here because something to do with maps. And so he returned to Finland, and because of how terrified he was, but out of guilt, he would contact a woman, Tina Orling of St. Louis Orienteering Club, because he was an orienter, which has to do with maps. And he would discuss where on a map he indeed found the skull or a skeleton. So the skeleton would be found with a plastic bag on the skull, some hair, and decayed clothing. But that wasn't all. He would also find lime on the body. So eventually, after building a forensic facial reconstruction, it would be broadcasted that this woman would be identified as that of Bun Chee NyHuis via a friend, which is Willaporn Cox. So they said they hadn't seen her since December of 1983, and they were told that she returned home because she wasn't happy. They would complete testing such as a superimposition testing in which they determined that this was Bunchie. So basically they took the picture of Bunchie and put it over a picture of the skeleton and it matched. Richard was found guilty and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole for approximately 50 years. He would appeal the case in 1995, but his conviction was affirmed and upheld. So yeah, really sad. Husband kills wife, husband goes to jail. But wife was identified. It just took a little bit of time. So that, my friends, is day 1 of Valentine's Crimes. Stay tuned for tomorrow, which is the murder of Betty Wollcipher. And I have a lot more in store for you guys.